They called us soft meat in their clicking, chittering language. The Galactic Coalition's finest warriors would gather in their mess halls, mandibles clacking with what passed for laughter among the Zefkari, as they shared videos of human soldiers stumbling through basic training. Our clumsy bipedal gait, our vulnerable flesh, our primitive projectile weapons, all of it was entertainment to beings who had conquered 17 star systems before humanity even discovered fire. But there's something the galaxy's apex predators never understood about humans. Something that evolution carved into our DNA during a million years of being hunted across African plains by creatures with sharper teeth, stronger claws, and better reflexes than us. We learned to think like prey, and then we became the hunters. When the Coalition's expansion fleet arrived at Earth's outer colonies, expecting easy conquest, they brought their cameras to record another amusing human defeat. They wanted to document our pathetic resistance for their archives, another comedy reel for their entertainment networks. They got their recording, but it wasn't the kind they expected. What they captured that day became known across the galaxy as the Terran Horror Files. Footage so disturbing that several member species petitioned to have it classified and sealed away. Because in those recordings you can see the exact moment when the universe's most advanced military force realized they hadn't been fighting soldiers. They'd been fighting ghosts. The Galactic Coalition fleet designation Omega-7 hung in the void above Kepler. 442b, like a collection of chrome daggers aimed at humanity's newest agricultural colony. 12 massive warships, each the size of a small city, bristled with weapons that could crack continents. Their crews numbered in the hundreds of thousands, representing the finest warriors from 19 different species that had earned their place in the galaxy's most powerful military alliance through centuries of successful conquest. Admiral Vex Thanos stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, his forearms clasped behind his chitinous back as he gazed down at the small blue-green world spinning peacefully below. The Zelkari commander's compound eyes registered electromagnetic signatures that indicated a human population of roughly 2 million scattered across 3 continents. Agricultural settlements, mining operations, and a single spaceport that housed perhaps 50 primitive spacecraft. It was, by galactic standards, barely worth the fuel expenditure to conquer it. But the humans had refused to surrender. This amused Vex Thanos greatly. In his 2 centuries of service to the Coalition, he had witnessed the capitulation of dozens of species. Most took one look at a Coalition battle group and immediately transmitted their unconditional surrender. The wise ones, anyway. The stubborn ones typically managed to destroy a few escort fighters before their worlds were reduced to radioactive glass. Humans, however, had done something unprecedented. They had laughed. Not just refused, laughed. When the Coalition had transmitted the standard surrender demand to the colonial government, the response had been a video message from the colony's governor, a graying human female named Sarah Chen, who had actually chuckled as she delivered humanity's reply. "You want our world," she had said, her weathered face creasing into what humans called a smile. "Come and take it." Then she had done something that had sent ripples of bewildered amusement throughout the Coalition fleet. She had held up a single digit of her hand in what human databases indicated was an ancient gesture of defiance. The bridge crew had erupted in their species' various equivalents of laughter. The mighty Thurok warriors had rumbled with deep bass chortles. The insectoid Vexkari had produced their characteristic chittering. Even the normally stoic Christek had allowed their bioluminescent panels to flicker with what passed for humor among their kind. Humans were truly the most entertaining species they had encountered. "Sir," came the translated voice of Lieutenant Zefko, the ship's tactical officer. Long-range scans indicate the humans have established defensive positions around their primary population centers. Our analysts count approximately 15,000 soldiers total. Vex Thanos felt his mandibles twitch with suppressed laughter. 15,000. The Coalition had brought 200,000 elite warriors, supported by orbital bombardment platforms that could level mountains. It wasn't just overkill, it was absurd overkill. What manner of defensive positions, he inquired, partly from curiosity and partly because the engagement would make excellent training footage for the Coalition Military Academy. "Primitive earthwork fortifications, sir. Trenches, bunkers constructed from local materials, weapon emplacements utilizing their projectile-based firearms. Our computer analysis suggests their defensive capabilities are approximately equivalent to what the hegemony employed during the Third Convergence War 3 centuries ago." A wave of chittering laughter swept through the bridge. The hegemony's military technology had been considered laughably obsolete even in its own time. They had lasted exactly 4 hours and 27 minutes against a Coalition expeditionary force 1/10 the size of the current fleet. Any signs of orbital defenses? Particle beam platforms? Quantum torpedo batteries? Vexthanus asked, though he already knew the answer. Negative, sir. They appear to have 12 surface-to-air missile batteries of remarkably primitive design. Our defensive screens could absorb their entire arsenal without registering damage. And naval forces? They have 37 spacecraft of various classes, sir. Our analysis indicates they're primarily civilian vessels hastily retrofitted with basic weaponry. The largest mass is approximately 800 tons. For comparison, one of our escort frigates masses 47,000 tons. Vexthanus turned to address his command staff, his translator collar converting his clicking speech patterns into the common galactic tongue. Gentlemen, it appears we have discovered a species that has somehow achieved interstellar travel while retaining the military sophistication of pre-industrial societies. This presents us with a unique opportunity. The bridge fell silent as officers from 19 different species focused their attention on their commander. We shall conduct this engagement as a live-fire training exercise. All ships will record the operation for later analysis and educational purposes. I want detailed tactical data on human combat behaviors, psychological profiles under stress, and comprehensive documentation of their military capabilities. He paused, allowing his mandibles to spread in what his species considered a predatory grin. The Coalition Research Division has been requesting more data on primitive warfare techniques. Today, we shall provide them with an abundance of material. Commander Thiska, the ship's intelligence officer, activated her datapad with one of her 6 tentacles. Shall I prepare the standard surrender ultimatum for broadcast, sir? No. Vexthanus clicked thoughtfully. I believe these humans require a more personal approach. They seem to respond to dramatic gestures. Let us give them one they will remember in their final moments. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, prepare for atmospheric entry. We will conduct a full-scale ground assault. I want every human defensive position identified and catalogued. We shall demonstrate the futility of resistance against the Coalition in the most comprehensive manner possible. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Across 12 massive warships, hundreds of thousands of warriors began preparing for what they anticipated would be the shortest and most entertaining military campaign in Coalition history. Transport ships the size of skyscrapers began descending through Kepler, a 442b's atmosphere, their hulls glowing cherry red from atmospheric friction. Each carried a full regiment of Coalition troops. Thurok shock troopers with their cybernetic enhancements. Vexkari aerial assault specialists with their natural flight capabilities. Christek heavy infantry whose crystalline exoskeletons could deflect anti-tank weaponry, and dozens of other species that represented the pinnacle of galactic military evolution. Lieutenant Colonel Trakos of the Thurok Dominance Guard watched through his transport's viewports as the human settlements grew larger below. His enhanced vision could already pick out individual human figures scurrying between their primitive fortifications, like insects preparing for a storm they could not hope to weather. Look at them, rumbled Sergeant Major Krultak, his mechanical voice synthesizer adding harmonic undertones to his amusement. They are actually attempting to establish firing positions, with projectile weapons against Coalition armor. The transport's complement of 40 Thurok warriors filled the cabin with their species equivalent of laughter, deep, bass rumbles that vibrated through the ship's hull. Each warrior stood over 3 meters tall, their bodies enhanced with the finest military cybernetics the galaxy could produce. Their exoskeletons could stop plasma rifle fire. Their reaction times had been boosted to superhuman levels, and their weapons could vaporize anything short of a main battle tank. They were elite soldiers who had conquered 17 star systems and had never experienced defeat. I have accessed human historical databases, announced technical specialist Vorthak, his optical implants flickering as he processed data streams. Their most recent major conflict was what they term World War II, conducted with primitive chemical explosives and kinetic weapons. They fought this war against themselves, using tactics that would be considered obsolete by any civilized species. The casualty rates they achieved against their own kind suggest remarkable inefficiency in military planning. How do they typically conduct ground warfare? Inquired Captain Hestow. Fascinating, sir. They march in formation toward enemy positions while firing projectile weapons at ranges that would be considered ineffective by modern standards. They construct fortifications from dirt and wood, operate vehicles that require fossil fuels, and rely on visual identification for targeting. Our intelligence estimates suggest the average human soldier requires approximately 3,000 projectile rounds to achieve a single confirmed casualty. The transport cabin, filled with rumbling laughter once again. Sir, interrupted the pilot's voice over the comms system, approaching designated landing zone. Human defensive positions identified. Initiating tactical scans. Through the transport's tactical display, the Thurok warriors could see the human settlement spread across a river valley below. The colonial city of New Perth housed approximately 50,000 humans and represented one of their 3 major population centers on the planet. The humans had constructed an elaborate network of trenches and bunkers in concentric rings around the city, with weapon emplacements positioned to cover the most obvious approach routes. It was, by coalition standards, charmingly primitive. The defensive lines looked like something from a military museum, complete with sandbag barriers and camouflage netting that would be completely ineffective against modern sensor technology. Analysis indicates approximately 2,000 human soldiers defending this position, reported the transport's computer system. Weapon signatures consistent with chemical explosive firearms, crew-served weapons of unknown classification, and what appears to be improvised explosive devices of primitive design. Lieutenant Colonel Trakos studied the tactical display with professional interest. The humans had clearly studied military science, but their implementation suggested they were working with severely limited resources and technology. Their positions were logically placed for defense against ground assault, but they had made no apparent accommodation for aerial attack, orbital bombardment, or energy weapons. Landing in 30 seconds, announced the pilot. Coalition forces are deploying across 17 landing zones simultaneously. Estimate complete planetary pacification in 4 hours. Through his transport's external cameras, Trakos could see the first elements of the coalition assault force, touching down across the valley. Massive deployment platforms disgorged companies of warriors while aerial support craft took up overwatch positions. The coordination was flawless, representing centuries of refined military doctrine applied by the galaxy's most professional armed forces. And then, something unexpected happened. The humans opened fire. But not in the way coalition analysts had predicted. There was no massed volley from their defensive positions, no desperate charge by their primitive infantry, no dramatic gesture of futile defiance. Instead, scattered reports began filtering through the coalition command network, of soldiers simply disappearing. Contact, man down, came the translated transmission from a Vexkari aerial reconnaissance team. Patrol leader Zixtal has been... Wait, what was that sound? The transmission cut to static. Lieutenant Colonel Trakos felt the first stirring of unease in his enhanced consciousness. The coalition assault was proceeding exactly according to plan, with forces advancing on all fronts toward human defensive positions. But every few minutes, another unit would report a casualty, always a single soldier, always without visual confirmation of the enemy, always accompanied by reports of a strange acoustic signature that their analysis computers couldn't classify. "Sir," came the voice of technical specialist Vorthak, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. "I am receiving scattered reports from our advanced scouts. They describe a high-velocity projectile weapon of unknown configuration. Sonic signature is inconsistent with anything in our databases. Primitive kinetic weapons."
Trakos replied automatically.
"Human projectile firearms. We expected this." "Negative, sir. The penetration characteristics are anomalous. 3 confirmed casualties have been recorded, all with wounds that suggest projectile velocities significantly exceeding human technological capabilities." The transport touched down with a muffled thud, and Trakos felt his enhanced reflexes automatically adjust to the planet's gravity. Through the external cameras, he could see the landing zone, a cleared area approximately 2 kilometers from the human defensive perimeter. His tactical display showed coalition forces advancing in textbook formation with appropriate spacing and overlapping fields of fire. Everything was proceeding perfectly, except for the soldiers who kept disappearing. "Deploy! Deploy! Deploy!" he roared, and 40 Thurok warriors streamed out of the transport like an unstoppable tide of military precision. Their enhanced sensors immediately catalogued the environment, atmospheric composition, gravitational variance, potential cover positions, threat assessment vectors. The human settlement lay before them like an open book. Primitive fortifications surrounded by cleared fields of fire, defensive positions marked with the smoke and muzzle flashes of their crude weapons, soldiers moving with the obvious inexperience of colonial militia. It should have been a turkey shoot. Lieutenant Colonel Trakos raised his plasma rifle and activated his unit's communication network. "All squads, advance to first phase line. Maintain formation and prepare for human counterattack. Remember, these are primitive opponents, using obsolete tactics. Stay alert for crude improvised explosives and massed infantry charges." The Thurok warriors began their advance across the open ground, their powered armor gleaming in the alien sun. Behind them, coalition forces were deploying across 17 similar landing zones, creating an unstoppable ring of military might around the human settlement, and somewhere in the distance, something was watching them through a scope. Marcus Chen lay motionless in his carefully constructed hide, 1,700 meters from the nearest Coalition landing zone. The ghillie suit had taken him 3 weeks to perfect, using local vegetation and pattern-breaking techniques his grandfather had taught him during hunting trips in the mountains of British Columbia. Every element was designed to defeat both visual and electronic detection, from the infrared dampening materials woven into the suit to the scent-masking compounds he had applied to every surface. The Barrett M10-7A1 rifle had been modified extensively for this engagement. The .50 caliber rounds were hand-loaded with tungsten core penetrators designed specifically to defeat advanced armor systems. The suppressor was a masterpiece of acoustic engineering, reducing the rifle's signature to a whisper that would dissipate long before enemy sensors could triangulate his position. But most importantly, Marcus Chen was patient. He had been lying in this position for 14 hours, monitoring Coalition deployment patterns and selecting his targets with the methodical precision of a craftsman. The aliens moved with obvious discipline and technological superiority, but they moved predictably. Their formations were textbook perfect, which made them textbook vulnerable to anyone who understood the textbooks they were using. Through his scope, Marcus watched a patrol of tall, cybernetically enhanced aliens advance toward the settlement's outer perimeter. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Son, the thing about hunting dangerous game is that the animal doesn't know it's being hunted. The moment it realizes you're there, everything changes." Marcus centered his crosshairs on the lead alien's head and began his breathing cycle. 2 seconds of inhalation, natural respiratory pause, gentle trigger squeeze during the natural break between heartbeats. The rifle whispered its deadly message across 1,700 meters of alien landscape. The tungsten core bullet struck Lieutenant Zixtel's head at 2,800 feet per second, the impact occurring faster than the speed of sound. The Vaxkari patrol leader simply ceased to exist from the shoulders up, his body collapsing like a discarded puppet, while his squad mates stared in shock at the sudden silence where their leader's communication chatter had been a moment before. Marcus was already selecting his next target before the first alien's body hit the ground. The Barrett's semi-automatic action chambered a fresh round with mechanical precision while Marcus tracked the patrol's reactions through his scope. They were confused, scanning the horizon for muzzle flashes that would never come. Their enhanced sensors were calibrated for energy weapons and modern battlefield signatures, not for chemical propellants burning in a suppressed barrel 1,700 meters away. Target 2, a tall alien with multiple arms examining his fallen comrade. Center mass shot to accommodate for equipment and unknown anatomy. The rifle whispered again. The second alien, technical specialist Vorthak, discovered that Coalition body armor was designed to stop plasma bolts and particle beams, not tungsten penetrators traveling at hypersonic velocity. The bullet punched through his torso like tissue paper, creating a wound channel that his enhanced physiology couldn't begin to process. Target 3, alien taking cover behind equipment, only his head visible through the scope. Whisper. Target 4, alien attempting to establish communication with command. Whisper. Marcus worked methodically through the patrol, each shot separated by precisely 15 seconds of careful observation and target selection. He wasn't hunting soldiers, he was hunting panic. Each casualty was calculated to maximize psychological impact while maintaining his concealment. When the last alien fell, Marcus carefully withdrew from his firing position and began moving toward his secondary hide. He had 17 more positions prepared, each offering different angles of fire and multiple escape routes. The aliens would eventually locate his first position, but by then he would be gone, leaving only empty brass and questions they couldn't answer. Behind him, Coalition forces were discovering that humans fought differently than anything in their databases. They were discovering that humans didn't fight like soldiers, they fought like ghosts. The Coalition command center aboard the Eternal Dominion had been designed to coordinate the simultaneous movement of millions of soldiers across multiple star systems. Its holographic displays could track individual squads while maintaining awareness of fleet-wide strategic objectives. The facility represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology, staffed by the finest tactical minds in the known universe. And yet, for the first time in his career, Admiral Vexthenus found himself staring at tactical data that made no sense whatsoever. "Report," he clicked, his forearms manipulating multiple control interfaces simultaneously, while his compound eyes processed incoming data streams from 17 landing zones. Commander Tiska's tentacles danced across her sensor array, her bioluminescent patches flickering with agitation. "Sir, we have confirmed 37 casualties across all operational zones. No visual confirmation of enemy contact. No detection of energy weapon signatures. No evidence of explosive devices. Elaborate. The casualties appear to be the result of kinetic projectiles of unknown origin. Ballistic analysis suggests extremely high-velocity impacts, but our sensors detect no corresponding weapons fire. Each casualty occurred during routine patrol operations, with no prior indication of human presence in the immediate area. Vextanus felt his mandibles click involuntarily, a nervous habit he hadn't exhibited since his days as a junior officer. "Show me the tactical overview." The main holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional representation of the battlefield around New Perth. Coalition forces appeared as blue icons advancing in perfect formation toward the human settlement's defensive perimeter. Red markers indicated confirmed casualties scattered seemingly at random across the operational area. What disturbed Vextanus was the pattern, or rather, the complete absence of any discernible pattern. Human defensive doctrine, according to Coalition intelligence files, emphasized concentrated firepower and massed formations. The casualties should have been clustered around specific engagement zones where human defenders made contact with Coalition forces. Instead, soldiers were dying in isolation, often while conducting routine reconnaissance or communication duties far from any known human position. "Computer analysis?" he inquired. Technical Officer Darvex manipulated his interface with six-fingered hands, pulling up statistical projections. "Based on current casualty rates and deployment patterns, complete pacification timeline has been extended from 4 hours to... Inconclusive, sir." "Inconclusive?" "The computer cannot establish a coherent threat assessment, Admiral. Human forces are not engaging our troops according to any recognized tactical doctrine. Individual casualties suggest sniper activity, but the ranges and accuracy levels exceed anything in our databases for pre-industrial civilizations." Vextanus studied the tactical display more carefully. Coalition doctrine called for overwhelming force applied at specific pressure points to break enemy resistance quickly and efficiently. It was a strategy that had worked flawlessly against every species they had encountered over the past 3 centuries. But doctrine assumed the enemy would fight like soldiers. It assumed they would mass their forces, defend key positions, and engage in recognizable patterns of military behavior. The humans appeared to be doing none of these things. "Lieutenant Zefko," he addressed his tactical officer, "redirect orbital sensors to focus on areas where casualties have occurred." "I want detailed environmental scans." "Immediately, sir." The tactical display zoomed in on the site where the first patrol had been eliminated. High-resolution orbital sensors revealed a small clearing where 5 Coalition soldiers lay motionless. Scan data showed no evidence of human presence. No heat signatures, no equipment signatures, no movement patterns that would indicate the location of the attackers. "Curious?" Vextanus murmured. "Expand the search radius. Look for anything anomalous." The sensors began a systematic sweep of the surrounding terrain, cataloging every bush, rock formation, and geographic feature within a 5-kilometer radius. The results were exactly what Coalition intelligence had predicted: agricultural terrain dotted with primitive settlements and basic infrastructure. Nothing that could conceal advanced military equipment or large concentrations of troops. And then, almost by accident, the sensors detected something that made Vextanus's mandibles spread in what his species considered an expression of dawning horror. A single human, lying motionless beneath carefully constructed camouflage, nearly 2 kilometers from the site of the attack. "Enhance that image," he commanded. The holographic display zoomed in on what appeared to be a small mound of vegetation. Only the most careful examination revealed the outline of a human figure, perfectly concealed and apparently equipped with a primitive projectile weapon of unusual configuration. "How long has he been there?" Vextanus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Technical Officer Darvex ran the calculation. "Based on movement patterns and environmental indicators, approximately 14 hours, sir. He was in position before our fleet achieved orbit." The implications hit Vextanus like a physical blow. The humans had not reacted to the Coalition assault. They had prepared for it. While his forces had been conducting their textbook deployment, human soldiers had already been in position, selecting targets and establishing fields of fire. "How many more?" he whispered. The orbital sensors began a comprehensive sweep of the entire operational area, looking for the specific signature they had just identified. The results appeared on the tactical display one by one. Individual heat signatures concealed beneath carefully constructed camouflage positioned at ranges that would allow them to engage Coalition forces without being detected by standard military sensors. 17 confirmed sniper positions around New Perth alone, each one offering multiple angles of fire and clear escape routes. each one occupied by a single human soldier who had been waiting patiently for coalition forces to expose themselves. "Sir," Commander Thiska's voice carried a note of uncertainty that Vexthanis had never heard from his intelligence officer. "We may need to reconsider our tactical assessment of human military capabilities." Before Vexthanis could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Incoming damage reports from ground forces flooded the communication channels, each one describing the same impossible scenario. Soldiers simply vanishing under fire from invisible enemies. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos had been hunting deer in the mountains outside Mexico City when the first alien ships appeared in Earth's skies. She had been 12 years old, carrying her father's old hunting rifle and learning the lessons that would save humanity 3 decades later. "Mija," her father had told her, crouched beside her in the pre-dawn darkness, "a good hunter doesn't chase the prey. She becomes part of the landscape until the prey comes to her." Now, at 42, Maria lay in a carefully prepared hide overlooking Coalition Landing Zone 7. Her M24 rifle trained on the command post where alien officers were attempting to coordinate their forces. She had been in position for 16 hours, watching through her scope as the aliens deployed with mechanical precision. They moved like soldiers. Professional, disciplined, following procedures that had probably worked perfectly on dozens of other worlds. But they moved predictably, and predictable movement was a sniper's greatest gift. Through her earpiece, she could hear the whispered reports from her fellow hunters spread across the valley. "Santos, this is Chen. Tango down at grid reference 447. 291. Moving to secondary position." "Copy, Chen." "Rodriguez, what's your status?" 2 targets eliminated at the communications array. "They're starting to bunch up, looking confused. Think we got their attention." Maria smiled grimly. The aliens had superior technology, superior numbers, and superior firepower. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed this would be a conventional military engagement. Humans had given up fighting conventional wars decades ago. When you were outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed, you didn't fight like soldiers. You fought like guerrillas. You fought like hunters. You disappeared into the landscape and let the enemy come to you. Through her scope, Maria watched an alien commander gesturing at a holographic display while several subordinates clustered around him. Perfect target grouping. Range, 1,847 meters. Wind speed, 2 meters per second from the southwest. Temperature, 23 degrees Celsius. Maria had made harder shots hunting mountain goats. She controlled her breathing, let her heart rate settle into the rhythm her father had taught her decades earlier. The crosshairs settled on the commander's center mass, accounting for the unknown properties of his armor and equipment. The rifle spoke once, and Lieutenant Colonel Trakos discovered that Turok's cybernetic enhancement included many improvements over basic biology, but did not include immunity to tungsten core bullets traveling at 3 times the speed of sound. Maria was already moving before his body hit the ground. The aliens would triangulate the shot within seconds, but she had 17 different prepared positions and knew every game trail, creek bed, and drainage ditch within 20 kilometers. By the time their response teams reached her firing position, she would be invisible again, selecting her next target from a completely different angle. Behind her, coalition forces were learning their first lesson about fighting humans. There was no such thing as a secure area when the enemy could kill you from 2 kilometers away and vanish like morning mist. The tactical briefing aboard the Eternal Dominion had taken on a distinctly different tone than Admiral Vexthanis had anticipated. Instead of reviewing mop-up operations and casualty statistics from human resistance, his staff officers were presenting damage reports that defied both logic and experience. "Current casualty count stands at 93 confirmed, 17 missing," reported Commander Thiska. 0 confirmed enemy casualties. 0 visual confirmation of enemy forces. "Impossible," clicked Vexthanis. 93 of our soldiers cannot simply disappear without some form of engagement. Nevertheless, sir, that appears to be exactly what has occurred. Our forces report single, high-velocity kinetic impacts followed by immediate cessation of target life signs. In each case, the casualty occurred while the soldier was conducting routine duties well within secured Coalition perimeter. Vexthanis studied the holographic battlefield display. Coalition forces maintained complete control of 17 landing zones and had established a secure perimeter around the human settlement. Their positions were textbook perfect, with overlapping fields of fire and appropriate defensive arrangements. And yet, somehow, human soldiers were moving through coalition lines like they didn't exist. "What do our sensors show?" Technical Officer Darvex manipulated his controls. "Sir, that is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this engagement. Our sensors detect no significant human military movement. Heat signature analysis indicates the majority of human defenders remain in their prepared positions around the settlement. We are not detecting any major troop movements that would account for the attacks on our forces. Then how are they reaching our soldiers? Unknown, sir. Either their stealth technology is significantly more advanced than our intelligence estimates, or... Darvex hesitated, his optical implants flickering with uncertainty. Or individual human soldiers are operating independently across extremely wide areas using techniques our sensors are not calibrated to detect. The idea was preposterous. Individual soldiers could not possibly threaten a modern military force. The logistical requirements alone made it impossible. Ammunition supply, communication networks, command and control structures. Modern warfare required massive organizational support to maintain effectiveness. But the casualty reports continued streaming in. Sir, interrupted the communication officer, receiving priority transmission from Ground Commander Hesdahl at Landing Zone 12. Put him through. The holographic display shifted to show the interior of a Coalition command bunker. Captain Hesdahl's usually confident demeanor had been replaced by something Vex Tanis had never seen in a Coalition officer, uncertainty bordering on fear. Admiral, we have a problem. Hesdahl began without preamble. My perimeter guards are being eliminated systematically. Single shots, extreme range, no visual contact with the enemy. We've lost 7 soldiers in the past hour, and my men are starting to refuse patrol assignments. Refuse assignments? Vex Thanos' mandibles clicked with indignation. Coalition soldiers did not refuse assignments. Sir, with respect, they've never faced anything like this. These humans aren't fighting like any enemy in our databases. They're not massing for attack, they're not defending positions, they're not following any recognizable tactical doctrine. They're just hunting us. The word hung in the air like a curse. Hunting. Coalition forces were being hunted like prey animals by primitive humans using obsolete weapons. Captain, you have the finest soldiers in the galaxy under your command, equipped with the most advanced military technology available. A handful of human snipers cannot possibly threaten a Coalition force. Begging your pardon, Admiral, but that's exactly what they're doing. My communications officer was killed while checking equipment inside our command bunker. Single shot through the vision port, range estimated at over 2,000 meters. The shooter was gone before we could respond. Vex Thanos felt something cold settle in his enhanced digestive system. A human had killed a Coalition soldier inside a fortified position from 2 kilometers away, then vanished without a trace. What are your sensor readings showing? Nothing, sir. That's what makes this so terrifying. Our equipment shows no enemy presence, no movement signatures, no heat traces. It's like we're being attacked by ghosts. Before Vex Thanos could respond, another alarm sounded throughout the command center. This time, the tactical display showed something that made his compound eyes widen in shock. Landing Zone 3 had gone dark. Completely dark. No communication signals, no life signs, no equipment signatures. 47 Coalition soldiers had simply disappeared. Darvex, he snapped. What happened to Landing Zone 3? Technical Officer Darvex worked frantically at his controls, pulling up sensor logs and communication records. Sir, the landing zone reported normal status 30 minutes ago. Since then, nothing. All equipment has ceased transmission. All personnel locator beacons have gone offline. Show me the area. The orbital sensor feed revealed Landing Zone 3 as it appeared from space. A cleared area dotted with Coalition equipment and vehicles, apparently abandoned. No signs of battle, no evidence of explosion or energy weapon discharge. The entire force had simply vanished. Expand the search radius, Vex Thanos ordered. Look for any signs of Coalition personnel. The sensors began a systematic sweep of the surrounding terrain. After several minutes of intensive searching, they found them. 47 Coalition soldiers scattered across a 5-kilometer radius, each one eliminated by a single precision shot. The bodies lay where they had fallen, apparently taken by surprise while conducting routine operations. But what chilled Vex Thanos to his core was the pattern. The casualties had occurred in sequence, starting from the perimeter and working inward toward the command post. Someone had systematically eliminated the entire force over the course of 30 minutes, moving like a predator through a herd of prey. Computer analysis? He demanded. How many human soldiers would be required to achieve this result? The computer processed the tactical data for several seconds before displaying its conclusion. Based on available evidence and known human capabilities, minimum force requirement of 30 to 40 trained snipers operating in coordinated teams. And how many human soldiers do our sensors actually detect in that area? Another pause. 0, sir. No human presence detected. Vextharnus stared at the display, his mind struggling to process information that contradicted everything he knew about warfare. 47 elite coalition soldiers had been eliminated by an enemy force that apparently didn't exist. Sergeant Tommy Running Bear had learned to move silently through forest terrain on the Pine Ridge Reservation, following trails his grandfather had shown him through the Badlands of South Dakota. The old man had taught him to become invisible, to read the land like a book, to understand that patience was the hunter's greatest weapon. Tommy, his grandfather had said, the earth will hide you if you listen to what she's telling you. But you got to become part of her first. Stop thinking like a man and start thinking like a shadow. Now, moving through the alien landscape of Kepler 442b, Tommy put those lessons to work. His ghillie suit was a masterpiece of camouflage art, incorporating local vegetation and scent-masking techniques passed down through generations of Lakota hunters. Every movement was calculated, every footstep placed with careful consideration for sound and visual signature. He had been tracking this patrol for 3 hours, staying parallel to their route while remaining completely invisible. The aliens moved with obvious discipline and technological superiority, but they moved like city dwellers in the wilderness, loud, predictable, completely unaware of their surroundings. Through his rifle scope, Tommy studied the patrol's movement pattern. 12 soldiers advancing in textbook formation across open ground, their attention focused on the human settlement visible in the distance. They communicated constantly through their electronic systems, chattering like tourists on a nature walk. Tommy's grandfather would have been appalled at their lack of fieldcraft. Range, 1,200 meters. Wind, negligible. Target, patrol leader, easily identified by the additional equipment and the way the others oriented on his position. The M40A5 rifle had been his companion for 15 years, first in the mountains of Afghanistan and now on this alien world. The weapon was an extension of his will, as familiar as his own heartbeat. The 7.62 mm round was loaded with a tungsten penetrator designed specifically for coalition armor. Tommy controlled his breathing, became one with the rifle, let his consciousness expand to encompass the entire tactical situation. Target, wind, range, terrain, escape routes, all of it flowed together into a single moment of perfect clarity. The rifle whispered its message across 1,200 meters of alien landscape. The patrol leader ceased to exist, his enhanced nervous system unable to process the tungsten penetrator that had just passed through his brain at 3 times the speed of sound. His soldiers stared in shock at their suddenly headless commander, while Tommy was already selecting target number 2. He worked methodically through the patrol, each shot separated by exactly 20 seconds. Not because he needed 20 seconds to aim, but because he wanted them to experience the terror of waiting for death they couldn't see coming. Target 2, communications specialist attempting to call for help. Whisper. Target 3, soldier taking cover behind equipment. Whisper. Target 4, alien scanning the horizon with enhanced optics. Whisper. Tommy eliminated the entire patrol without moving from his position, each shot placed with surgical precision. When the last alien fell, he carefully collected his empty brass casings and began moving towards his secondary position, 2 kilometers away. Behind him, coalition forces were discovering that the humans they had come to conquer fought like the land itself, invisible, patient, and absolutely merciless. The Emergency Tactical Conference aboard the Eternal Dominion brought together the highest-ranking coalition officers from across the fleet. Admirals, generals, and species commanders who had conquered 17 star systems now sat in stunned silence as they reviewed casualty reports that defied every principle of modern warfare. Admiral Vextharnus stood before the holographic display showing current tactical status across all operational zones. The numbers were bad enough. 347 confirmed casualties, 89 missing, 0 confirmed enemy casualties. But what truly disturbed him was the pattern emerging from the data. Human forces were not engaged in conventional military operations. They were conducting a hunting campaign. Gentlemen, he began, his translator collar converting his clicking speech into the common tongue, we appear to have encountered a species that does not fight according to recognized military doctrine. Our intelligence estimates regarding human capabilities were incomplete. General Thurop Makkos, commander of the Coalition ground forces, rumbled his disagreement. Admiral, with respect, we are facing primitive humans armed with chemical explosive weapons. Our casualties, while unexpected, represent less than 2% of our total force. We maintain overwhelming superiority in every measurable category. And yet, Vextharnus clicked. We have been unable to locate, engage, or eliminate any significant portion of the enemy force. Our soldiers are being killed by invisible opponents using weapons that should not be capable of penetrating Coalition armor. Air Marshal Zefkari Yistek fluttered her wing membranes in agitation. The problem is tactical, not strategic. These humans are using stealth techniques that our sensors are not calibrated to detect. We simply need to adjust our detection parameters. Computer, Vexthanis addressed the ship's artificial intelligence, display comparative analysis of human combat performance versus pre-mission intelligence estimates. The holographic display shifted to show a side-by-side comparison that made several officers shift uncomfortably in their environmental suits. Pre-mission estimates had predicted human forces would engage in massed infantry assaults using primitive weaponry, with expected casualties among coalition forces measured in single digits. Actual performance showed individual human soldiers operating independently across vast distances, using precision weapons to eliminate coalition targets while remaining completely undetected by advanced military sensors. Computer, based on current performance data, project timeline for complete pacification of human forces. The computer processed the request for several seconds before displaying a result that sent a chill through the assembled officers. Unable to calculate. Current human force disposition and tactical doctrine do not conform to any recognized military model. Insufficient data to generate meaningful projections. The silence that followed was broken only by the ambient sounds of the ship's environmental systems. The finest military computer in the galaxy could not determine how to defeat 15,000 human colonial militia using primitive weapons. Perhaps, suggested Intelligence Coordinator Kristek Vardun, his bioluminescent panels flickering with uncertainty, we should consider the possibility that our intelligence regarding human capabilities was fundamentally flawed. In what way? Inquired Vexthanis. We assumed that humans were a primitive species because their technology appears primitive by our standards. But what if their military doctrine has evolved along different lines than our own? What if they have developed capabilities that our sensors cannot detect? General Makos rumbled his skepticism. You are suggesting that humans possess stealth technology superior to coalition systems. I am suggesting that humans may have developed capabilities that we do not recognize as technology. Consider, every casualty has been achieved using kinetic projectile weapons at ranges exceeding 2 kilometers. The accuracy required for such shots approaches theoretical maximum for chemical explosive firearms. Technical coordinator Darvex manipulated his interface, pulling up ballistic analysis from the casualties. Sir, analysis of recovered projectiles indicates precision manufacturing tolerances that should be impossible for the metallurgical capabilities we detected during pre-invasion reconnaissance. Meaning? Either human manufacturing capabilities are significantly more advanced than we believed, or individual human soldiers are capable of modifying primitive weapons to achieve performance characteristics exceeding our weapon specifications. The implications settled over the conference like a toxic cloud. If humans could enhance primitive weapons to match coalition military hardware, what other capabilities had their intelligence estimates missed? Admiral, interrupted the communication officer, receiving emergency transmission from Ground Commander Hestal. Priority 1. Put him through. Captain Hestal's image appeared in the holographic display, but the confident coalition officer from earlier reports was gone. In his place stood a soldier whose species equivalent of fear was clearly visible in his bioluminescent markings. Admiral, I need immediate reinforcement or evacuation authorization. My force has been reduced to 60% operational status, and I've lost contact with 3 of my patrol teams. Captain, you have nearly 2,000 soldiers under your command. How is this possible? Sir, we're not fighting soldiers, we're fighting ghosts. My men are being eliminated by targets they cannot see, cannot track, and cannot engage. Every time we attempt to locate the source of fire, we find empty terrain and no trace of enemy presence. General Marcos leaned forward. Captain, are you telling me that Thurok warriors are afraid of human snipers? General, with respect, I am telling you that my soldiers are being systematically hunted by an enemy that appears to violate the basic laws of physics. They fire from positions that our sensors show are unoccupied, achieve accuracy that should be impossible with their weapons, and vanish from areas we have under complete surveillance.
Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center.
The tactical display updated to show new information that made Admiral Vexthanis feel something he had never experienced in 2 centuries of military service. Fear. Landing zones 7, 12, and 15 had gone dark simultaneously. Nearly 8,000 coalition soldiers had simply disappeared. And somewhere in the mountains surrounding New Perth, human hunters were reloading their rifles and selecting new targets. The emergency evacuation of Landing Zone 7 began at 0347 hours local time, under cover of Coalition air support and orbital fire suppression. What should have been a routine extraction of non-critical personnel turned into something that would haunt Coalition military doctrine for generations to come. Wing Commander Thisiska Vendal led a squadron of 12 atmospheric fighters in close air support, her enhanced reflexes scanning the terrain below for any sign of human activity. The Coalition evacuation protocol was textbook perfect. Establish air superiority, suppress ground threats, extract personnel under protective cover. But the humans weren't following the textbook. Through her fighter's advanced sensor suite, Thiska watched the evacuation proceed below. Coalition ground troops moved in disciplined formation toward extraction points while transport craft descended from orbit. Everything appeared normal, professional, according to plan. Then her wingman simply exploded. Not hit by a missile, not struck by energy weapons, not brought down by any recognizable anti-aircraft system. Flight leader Zefko's fighter simply disintegrated in midair, raining debris across the landscape below. Mayday! Mayday! Thiska's son transmitted on emergency frequencies. Flight leader down. Cause unknown. Repeat. Cause unknown. She banked her fighter into evasive maneuvers while her sensor systems frantically scanned for threats. Coalition air doctrine called for immediate identification and suppression of ground-based anti-aircraft positions, but her sensors showed nothing. No missile launches, no energy weapon emplacements, no indication of any anti-aircraft capability whatsoever. Squadron leader, came the voice of her flight coordinator. Orbital sensors detect no hostile air defense systems. What is your tactical assessment? Before Thiska could respond, another of her pilots vanished in a ball of expanding plasma. Flight Officer Kestel had been flying in perfect formation one moment and simply ceased to exist the next. 2 fighters down, she reported, her voice betraying the first hints of panic. No enemy contact. Repeat. No visual or sensor contact with hostile forces. What Thiska didn't know was that 3,200 meters below her position, Gunnery Sergeant Jake Morrison was tracking her fighter through the scope of a modified Barrett M82A1 rifle loaded with custom armor-piercing incendiary rounds. The former Marine Scout sniper had spent the previous week studying Coalition fighter movement patterns, calculating lead times and intercept angles for targets traveling at atmospheric flight speeds. Morrison had learned his trade in the mountains of Afghanistan, where Taliban fighters with primitive weapons had regularly brought down sophisticated aircraft using nothing more than patience, skill, and intimate knowledge of terrain. The principles hadn't changed, only the targets. Range: 3,200 meters and closing. Target speed, approximately 400 meters per second. Intercept angle, 23 degrees. Wind speed, negligible. Morrison had made the shot before, during night operations in Helmand Province when a Taliban helicopter had made the mistake of following a predictable flight pattern. The technique was simple in concept, extraordinarily difficult in execution. Predict where the aircraft would be when the bullet arrived, then place the shot in that empty space, and let physics do the rest. The .50 caliber armor-piercing incendiary round left the Barrett's muzzle at 853 meters per second, tracing an invisible arc through the alien atmosphere. Morrison was already moving toward his extraction point when the bullet intersected with Wing Commander This's fighter at precisely the calculated moment. The round punched through the fighter's armored cockpit, detonated its incendiary charge inside the craft's environmental system, and turned one of the Coalition's most advanced atmospheric fighters into a brief star in the alien sky. Morrison collected his brass, secured his rifle, and began the 2-kilometer movement to his secondary position. Above him, the surviving Coalition fighters were frantically searching for anti-aircraft positions that didn't exist, while their pilots discovered that air superiority meant nothing when your enemy could kill you from distances that made your sensors useless. The tactical briefing aboard the Eternal Dominion had taken on the atmosphere of a war crimes tribunal. Admiral Vaxtanis stood before his senior staff, studying casualty reports that represented the worst military disaster in Coalition history. Current status, he demanded. Commander Thiska manipulated her interface with trembling tentacles. Total casualties now exceed 1,500 confirmed, 400 missing. We have lost 17 atmospheric fighters, 6 orbital support craft, and complete contact with 5 ground installations. Enemy casualties? The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Technical Officer Darvex responded. 0 confirmed, sir. Our forces have not successfully engaged any human targets. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. 1,500 Coalition soldiers, the finest warriors from 19 different species, had been eliminated by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't fight. Computer, Vexthanis addressed the ship's AI. Display tactical analysis of human combat doctrine based on observed behavior. The holographic display shifted to show a three-dimensional model of human military capabilities as now understood by coalition analysis systems. What appeared was so far removed from their pre-invasion intelligence that several officers questioned the computer's accuracy. Analysis indicates human forces employ distributed independent operating units with extreme mobility and stealth characteristics. Individual soldiers appear capable of sustained operations across distances exceeding 100 kilometers while maintaining communication discipline and coordinated targeting. Coordinated targeting? Inquired General McCoss. Affirmative. Pattern analysis suggests human attacks are not random, but follow sophisticated tactical planning. Enemy forces appear to be conducting systematic elimination of coalition command and control elements, communications personnel, and specialized equipment operators. Air Marshal Yeasthak fluttered her wings nervously. They are targeting our infrastructure. More than that, Vexthanis realized. They are targeting our ability to coordinate responses. Every casualty has been carefully selected to maximize disruption to our command structure. The implications were staggering. The humans weren't just killing coalition soldiers. They were systematically dismantling the coalition's ability to function as a military force. Each death weakened communication networks, degraded command capabilities, and forced surviving units to consolidate defensive positions. Sir, interrupted the communication officer, receiving transmission from orbital platform Gamma 7. They report anomalous activity on the planet's surface. Specify. Multiple heat signatures moving at high velocity across the terrain. Pattern suggests coordinated movement between human population centers. Vexthanis studied the display as orbital sensor data revealed something that made his compound eyes widen in shock. Heat trails crisscrossed the landscape between human settlements, indicating rapid movement of personnel and equipment, on a scale far exceeding their intelligence estimates of human military strength. How many? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. Computer analysis suggests minimum of 50,000 active personnel, sir. Possibly more. The number hit the assembled officers like a physical blow. Coalition intelligence had estimated total human military strength at 15,000 colonial militia. If 50,000 trained soldiers were now active on the planet's surface, everything they had assumed about human capabilities was wrong. Where did they come from? Demanded General Makokos. Technical Officer Darvex worked frantically at his controls, pulling up pre-invasion reconnaissance data. Sir, reviewing orbital surveillance records from the past 72 hours. Analysis indicates, report. Sir, the heat signatures were there all along. We simply didn't recognize them as military personnel. Vexthanis felt his mandibles click involuntarily. Elaborate. Human population centers show significant numbers of individuals engaged in what we classified as civilian activities: agriculture, manufacturing, education, general commerce. However, thermal pattern analysis now suggests many of these civilians possess heat signatures consistent with enhanced physical conditioning and carry equipment that could be classified as military hardware. The truth descended on the coalition command staff like a collapsing star. They hadn't been fighting 15,000 colonial militia. They had been fighting an entire planetary population that had mobilized for war while maintaining the appearance of civilian normalcy. Computer, reassess human military strength based on current data. The computer processed the request for several minutes before displaying results that made Admiral Vexthanis question his own sanity. Estimated human combat strength, 1.7 million active personnel. Equipment assessment indicates advanced manufacturing capabilities producing weapons and ammunition at levels consistent with major military-industrial complex. Estimated production capacity suggests sustainable operations for extended conflict duration. General Makis rumbled his disbelief. Impossible. Our reconnaissance showed primitive agricultural settlements and basic industrial facilities. Sir, Darvex replied, his optical implants flickering rapidly. I am now detecting electromagnetic signatures consistent with advanced manufacturing facilities, communication networks, and logistical systems. However, these signatures are masked by techniques that make them appear to be civilian infrastructure. Intelligence Coordinator Vardun's bioluminescent panels flashed with patterns his species associated with existential dread. Admiral, I believe we may have made a fundamental error in our assessment of human civilization. Meaning? We assumed that primitive technology indicated primitive capabilities, but what if humans have deliberately designed their civilization to appear primitive while maintaining advanced military capabilities? What if everything we observed during reconnaissance was an elaborate deception? The concept was so alien to Coalition thinking that it took several moments for its implications to register. The Coalition had conquered 17 star systems by identifying planets with advanced civilizations and overwhelming them with superior force. They had never encountered a species that deliberately concealed its true capabilities. "Sir," interrupted the sensor officer, detecting massive energy signature from human settlement New Perth. Analysis indicates activation of previously undetected power generation systems. The tactical display zoomed in on the human city that Coalition forces had been attempting to capture for the past 18 hours. What appeared was a revelation that shattered every assumption about human technology. Concealed beneath the primitive facades of buildings and infrastructure, massive industrial complexes were coming online. Manufacturing facilities that had been hidden from orbital reconnaissance began producing equipment at rates that suggested technology far more advanced than anything in Coalition databases. Computers scanned for similar signatures at other human population centers. The results appeared one by one across the planetary display. Every human settlement contained hidden industrial capacity. Underground manufacturing networks connected by concealed transportation systems. Communication arrays that had been disguised as civilian infrastructure. An entire planetary military-industrial complex that had been invisible to Coalition intelligence until the moment humans decided to reveal it. "Admiral," came the voice of Wing Commander Thissisa from the surface, her transmission crackling with interference. "We have a problem. Human settlements are deploying previously undetected air defense systems. I'm reading energy signatures consistent with advanced surface-to-air weapons." Before Vex Thanos could respond, the transmission cut to static. Colonel Sarah Chen stood in the command bunker beneath New Perth, watching tactical displays that showed Coalition forces scattered across the valley in increasingly desperate defensive positions. The holographic interface was a masterpiece of human engineering, disguised as simple electronic equipment but capable of coordinating military operations across an entire star system. "Status report," she requested. Major Rodriguez manipulated his console, pulling up data from human forces deployed across the planet. Phase 1 complete. Coalition ground forces have been reduced to approximately 60% strength and are consolidating into defensive positions. Air superiority has been neutralized. Phase 2 status? Manufacturing complexes are online and producing ammunition at projected rates. Our hunters have confirmed Coalition fleet deployment patterns and identified priority targets for orbital engagement. Chen studied the tactical situation with professional satisfaction. The Coalition had arrived expecting to fight colonial militia using primitive weapons. Instead, they had walked into a carefully prepared trap designed by military planners who understood exactly how Coalition forces operated. "Computer, display Coalition force disposition." The holographic display showed Coalition units scattered across 17 landing zones, each one now isolated and under constant pressure from invisible human forces.
What the aliens didn't understand was that they weren't fighting individual snipers conducting random attacks.
They were fighting a coordinated military campaign conducted by veterans who had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario. "Major, initiate Phase 3. "Yes, ma'am." Activating orbital defense platforms. Across the planet's surface, installations that had appeared to be simple communication arrays began reconfiguring themselves into something that made Coalition orbital surveillance officers question their own senses. Massive railgun batteries emerged from underground installations, while particle beam arrays deployed from facilities that had been catalogued as agricultural processing centers. The humans hadn't just hidden their military strength. They had turned their entire planet into a fortress while making it appear to be a collection of primitive settlements. Admiral Vex Thanos stared at incoming sensor data that indicated his fleet was now under direct threat from surface-based weapons that shouldn't exist. Energy readings suggested the humans possessed orbital defense capabilities that rivaled anything in the Coalition arsenal. "Sir," reported the tactical officer, "human installations are achieving target lock on our orbital platforms. Energy signatures indicate charging sequence for weapons of unknown configuration. Raise defensive screens. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." But as Vex Thanos gave the orders, he realized the terrible truth. The Coalition fleet was positioned in precise formation above the human planet, exactly where human military planners had wanted them to be. Every ship was within range of weapons that had been hidden until the moment humans decided to reveal them. The hunters had become the hunted. The first railgun fired from the mountain complex north of New Perth, its projectile traveling at a significant fraction of light speed toward Coalition orbital platform Gamma 7. The platform's defensive screens, designed to stop energy weapons and explosive devices, offered no protection against a solid tungsten penetrator traveling at relativistic velocity. Platform Gamma 7 simply ceased to exist. Colonel Chen watched the tactical display as human installations across the planet opened fire simultaneously. Railguns, particle beams, and weapon systems that had been concealed for decades began engaging coalition targets with devastating precision. All units, she transmitted on the Human Command Network. Initiate Phase 4. Show them what humans do to uninvited guests. Across Kepler, 442b, the real war was about to begin. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as proximity alarms screamed throughout its command center. Admiral Vexthanis watched in horrified fascination as his tactical display showed projectiles moving at velocities that should have been impossible for planetary-based weapon systems. "Evasive maneuvers!" he commanded, but even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The railgun projectile struck the Coalition flagship starboard shield array with the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The defensive screens, designed to deflect particle beams and absorb explosive warheads, simply vaporized under the impact of solid matter traveling at 12% of light speed. Damage report. Vexthanis clicked, his forearms working frantically at control interfaces while his compound eyes tracked incoming fire from 17 different surface installations. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, reported the engineering officer. "Shield generators offline, structural integrity compromised." Before anyone could respond, 3 more railgun rounds struck the ship in rapid succession, each impact sending shockwaves through the massive vessel. The finest warship in the Coalition fleet, a technological marvel that had reduced enemy civilizations to radioactive slag, was being systematically dismantled by weapons that human databases claimed were impossible. "Sir," shouted the sensor officer over the chaos of alarms and emergency responses, detecting massive energy buildup from human installations. Multiple target locks achieved. The tactical display showed something that defied every principle of galactic warfare. Across the planet's surface, concealed weapons installations were engaging the entire Coalition fleet simultaneously. Particle beam arrays that had been disguised as communication towers were firing coordinated volleys at orbital targets, while railgun batteries emerged from underground silos that hadn't existed on any reconnaissance survey. "How is this possible?" demanded General Makos, his cybernetic enhancement sparking from feedback as another impact sent him crashing into a bulkhead. Technical Officer Darvax worked desperately at his controls, trying to analyze the impossible data streaming through his systems. "Sir, these installations appear to have been constructed over several decades using advanced nanotechnology and molecular engineering. The humans built an entire planetary defense network while making it appear to be primitive civilian infrastructure." "Computer," Vexthanis commanded. "Analysis of human technological capabilities based on current evidence." The response came immediately, processed by artificial intelligence systems that had never encountered data so far outside their programmed parameters. Human technology assessment requires complete revision. Evidence indicates advanced materials science, energy generation capabilities exceeding Coalition standards, manufacturing techniques utilizing molecular assembly, and weapons technology of unknown classification. Previous assessment of primitive species is invalid. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Invalid. Everything the Coalition thought they knew about humans was wrong. Utterly, completely, catastrophically wrong. "Admiral," came the voice of Air Marshal Istek through the communication system, "my remaining fighters report human aircraft rising from concealed installations. Design configuration unknown. Performance characteristics exceeding our capability." Through the command center's main display, Vexthanis watched as sleek human fighters emerged from facilities that had appeared to be simple manufacturing plants. The aircraft moved with impossible grace and acceleration, their design suggesting technology that the Coalition's best engineers would struggle to understand. "Impossible," he whispered. "Our intelligence indicated humans had achieved basic atmospheric flight using chemical propulsion." "Sir," reported the tactical officer, his voice carrying notes of panic. "Human fighters are engaging our remaining air support. Initial contact reports suggest, sir, our pilots are being outmatched." The implications crashed over Vexthanis like a tidal wave. The Coalition had arrived expecting to conquer a primitive civilization using stone tools and chemical explosives. Instead, they had attacked a technologically superior species that had been pretending to be primitive while preparing for war. Colonel Sarah Chen watched the battle unfold from her command center, her weathered face showing grim satisfaction as Coalition forces discovered what humans were truly capable of when they stopped pretending to be harmless farmers and miners. "Status of orbital engagement?" she inquired. Major Rodriguez monitored incoming data from the Planetary Defense Network. 17 coalition warships engaged, 4 destroyed, 7 heavily damaged, 6 attempting to withdraw to safe distance. Human casualties, 0. Ground forces? Coalition units are in full retreat toward their landing zones. Our hunter teams are maintaining contact and eliminating stragglers. Estimated coalition ground strength now 30% of original deployment. Chen nodded with professional approval. The plan had worked exactly as designed. Let the aliens land their forces, allow them to spread across the terrain, then systematically destroy their ability to coordinate and support each other. Classic military doctrine, executed with precision that would have made Sun Tzu proud. Phase 5 authorization? Major Rodriguez hesitated. Ma'am, Phase 5 will reveal our full capabilities. Once we deploy the orbital platforms, there will be no concealing what we really are. Chen studied the tactical display showing coalition ships attempting to flee to higher orbits while human surface installations continued their devastating bombardment. The moment for subtlety had passed. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity truly represented. Execute Phase 5. Full deployment. Across the star system, installations that had been hidden in asteroid belts and on distant moons began activating. Human technology that had been developed in secret over the past century revealed itself in a display of military might that dwarfed anything the Coalition had ever encountered. Massive orbital platforms emerged from stealth configurations, their hulls bristling with weapons that made Coalition warships look like primitive spacecraft. Manufacturing facilities built into asteroids began producing warships using techniques that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Mining installations revealed themselves to be fortified bases containing armies of automated defense systems. And from the outer system, something began moving toward the battle zone that made every sensor operator in the Coalition fleet question their own sanity. "Sir," reported the sensor officer aboard the Eternal Dominion, his voice barely above a whisper, detecting artificial construct at extreme range. "Mass." "Sir, the mass readings can't be correct. Display it." The main screen shifted to show long-range sensor data from the system's outer reaches. What appeared was a structure so massive that it defied comprehension, an artificial construct larger than most planets, moving toward the inner system under its own power. Computer analysis. Artificial structure mass. Approximately 4.7 times 10 circumflex 23 kilograms. Composition. Unknown materials. Energy signature exceeding measurement capability. Classification unknown. Admiral Vex Thanos stared at the display, his enhanced intellect struggling to process what he was seeing. The humans had built something the size of a small moon and somehow concealed it in the outer system where Coalition reconnaissance had never detected it. How long until it reaches our position? Current velocity suggests intercept in approximately 4 hours, sir. 4 hours. In 4 hours, whatever that thing was would arrive in the inner system, and Vex Thanos had the horrible suspicion that his fleet would not survive the encounter. "Sir," interrupted the communication officer, "receiving transmission from human colonial government. Priority diplomatic frequency. Put it through." The main display shifted to show Governor Sarah Chen sitting calmly in what appeared to be a simple civilian office. But now Vex Thanos could see details he had missed during their first communication. The subtle indicators of advanced technology disguised as primitive equipment. The carefully planned lighting that concealed sophisticated display systems. The background details that suggested this colonial government was far more than it appeared. "Admiral Vex Thanos," she began, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who held all the advantages, "I believe it's time we had an honest conversation." "Governor Chen," Vex Thanos replied, struggling to maintain diplomatic composure while his ship shuddered under continued bombardment. "I was not aware that human civilian governments possessed such extensive military capabilities." Chen's smile was cold enough to freeze plasma. "Admiral, you made the mistake of assuming that primitive and peaceful were the same thing. Let me educate you about human nature." The display behind her shifted to show a tactical overview of the entire star system. What Vex Thanos saw made his mandibles click involuntarily with terror. The system wasn't just defended, it was militarized to a degree that exceeded anything in Coalition space. Hidden installations covered every planetary body. Automated defense networks spanned millions of cubic kilometers. Manufacturing facilities produced warships and weapons at rates that suggested technology far beyond anything the Coalition had achieved. "You see, Admiral, humans learned something very important during our early history. We learned that predators respect only strength. and that the appearance of weakness can be a weapon more powerful than any gun. Chen leaned forward, her expression hardening. For the past century, we've allowed the galaxy to think we were harmless primitives scratching out a living on backwater worlds. We encouraged that belief. We cultivated it. Why? Vexthanus asked, though he suspected he didn't want to hear the answer. Because we knew that eventually someone like you would come calling, someone who thought humans would be easy prey. Chen's smile turned predatory. We've been preparing for this conversation for a very long time. The display shifted again, showing coalition fleet movements over the past several months. Vexthanus realized with growing horror that every step of their approach had been monitored, analyzed, and prepared for. The humans had known they were coming long before the fleet had achieved orbits. You see, Admiral, humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking very softly for a very long time. Now let me show you our stick. The long-range sensors detected new movement from the massive construct in the outer system. As it drew closer, its true nature became apparent to Coalition analysts. It wasn't just a space station or orbital platform. It was a battleship. A single warship larger than most Coalition fleets, bristling with weapons that incorporated technology so advanced that Coalition computers couldn't even classify it. The vessel moved through space with impossible grace, its design suggesting engineering principles that violated known physics. Computer, Vexthanus commanded. Tactical analysis of approaching vessel. Unable to comply. Vessel configuration exceeds all known parameters. Estimated weapons capability, sufficient to sterilize planetary surfaces from interstellar distances. General Marcus rumbled his disbelief. Impossible. No species possesses the technology to construct vessels of that magnitude. No known species, Chen corrected from the communication screen. But you never asked us what we were capable of, Admiral. You simply assumed we were primitives and planned accordingly. She stood up, and for the first time, Vexthanus could see her clearly. This wasn't a simple colonial governor managing an agricultural settlement. This was a military commander whose equipment and bearing suggested she was part of an organization with capabilities that dwarfed the Coalition. Now, Admiral, let me explain your current situation. Your fleet is outnumbered, outgunned, and completely surrounded. Your ground forces have been eliminated, or are in the process of being eliminated. Your technological advantage has proven to be a technological disadvantage, and in approximately 3 hours, the USCS Retribution will arrive to ensure that any survivors receive a proper education about human hospitality. The tactical display updated to show the current status of Coalition forces. The numbers were devastating. 89% casualties among ground troops, 67% fleet losses, 0 human casualties. You have 2 options, Chen continued. Option 1. Continue this engagement and discover why humans don't have any natural predators. Option 2. Surrender your remaining forces and accept our terms for your survival. Vexthanus looked around his command center at officers representing the finest military minds from 19 different species, all staring at displays that showed their complete and utter defeat at the hands of a species they had considered beneath notice. What are your terms? He asked, the words tasting like poison in his translator. Simple. You will return to Coalition space and deliver a message to your leadership. You will tell them that humans are not interested in joining their galactic community. You will tell them that human space is off-limits to Coalition expansion. And you will tell them that the next fleet they send will not be offered the option of surrender. Chen's image flickered, and for a moment, Vexthanus caught a glimpse of what lay behind the simple colonial governor facade. Advanced technology, military installations, and personnel whose equipment suggested capabilities far beyond anything in Coalition databases. Oh, and Admiral, you might want to mention that humans have been aware of the Coalition for quite some time. We know where your homeworlds are. We know your fleet deployment patterns. We know your industrial capabilities. Her smile turned absolutely arctic. We know exactly how to find you if you make us angry. The transmission ended, leaving the Coalition command staff in stunned silence. Sir, whispered the sensor officer, the approaching vessel has achieved weapons lock on our position. Energy readings suggest they could vaporize our entire fleet with a single volley. Admiral Vexthanus stared at the tactical display, watching as the most powerful military force in galactic history was held at gunpoint by a species they had planned to conquer in a single afternoon. The USCS Retribution continued its approach, and with each passing hour, Coalition sensors revealed more details about human technology that shattered their understanding of what was possible. The massive warship didn't just move through space, It folded space around itself, traveling by means that made Coalition faster than light drives look like primitive chemical rockets. "Sir," reported Technical Officer Darvex, his optical implants flickering rapidly as he processed impossible data. "Analysis of human vessel construction materials indicates the use of programmable matter. The hull appears to be continuously reconfiguring itself for optimal performance characteristics." Programmable matter? Vexthanis had heard theoretical discussions about such technology, but no species had ever achieved practical application.
Yes, sir.
The vessel's mass is constantly shifting to optimize structural integrity, weapons deployment, and defensive capabilities. It's not just a ship. It's a continuously evolving weapons platform. Air Marshal Eustache's wing membranes trembled with species-specific expressions of terror. "Admiral, my remaining pilots report human fighters demonstrating impossible maneuverability. They appear to be achieving acceleration rates that should liquefy any organic pilot. Computer analysis? Human pilots appear to be enhanced beyond baseline organic parameters, sir. Reaction times and G-force tolerance suggest extensive biological or cybernetic modification." The implications were staggering. Not only had humans concealed their technological capabilities, they had enhanced themselves to operate equipment that no normal biological entity could survive. They had turned themselves into living weapons. "Admiral," came a new transmission from Governor Chen. "I thought you might be interested in a brief history lesson while you consider your options." The main display showed a timeline of human expansion into space, but not the primitive colonization efforts Coalition intelligence had documented. This showed systematic military preparation on a scale that dwarfed anything the Coalition had achieved. "You see, Admiral, humans learned about the Coalition approximately 80 years ago when one of your exploration vessels made a brief reconnaissance of our home system. Your crew probably thought they were undetected, conducting routine surveys of primitive civilizations." Vexthanis felt his compound eyes widen. Coalition records showed no such contact with human space. "We captured that vessel, Admiral. We studied your technology, learned your languages, understood your culture. We discovered that the galaxy contained predatory species that considered other civilizations to be resources for exploitation." Chen's expression hardened. "We decided that was unacceptable. The timeline shifted to show human technological development accelerating at impossible rates. Within decades, they had not just matched Coalition technology but surpassed it by orders of magnitude. We spent the next 80 years preparing for your arrival. Every human colony was designed to appear primitive while concealing advanced manufacturing and weapons systems. Every human settlement was actually a military installation disguised as civilian infrastructure. Every human citizen received military training as part of their standard education. The display showed the true scope of human preparation. Millions of hidden installations across dozens of star systems. Automated manufacturing networks that could produce warships and weapons at rates that exceeded Coalition industrial output. Training facilities that had prepared every human civilian to be a potential soldier. "You didn't invade a collection of primitive agricultural colonies, Admiral. You attacked the most militarized civilization in galactic history." General Makos rumbled his confusion.
But why conceal your capabilities?
"With such technology, humans could have conquered the galaxy themselves." Chen's laugh was cold and bitter. "General, you still don't understand human nature. We don't want to conquer anyone. We want to be left alone. But we learned long ago that civilizations like yours only understand strength, so we made sure we had more strength than anyone else in the galaxy." "The other species in Coalition space," Vexthanis asked, "how many of them joined willingly?" "According to our intelligence, none of them, Admiral. Every species in the Coalition was conquered, threatened, or coerced into joining. You've built an empire based on predation and exploitation." Chen leaned forward. "We're here to tell you that the predation stops now." The tactical display updated to show new information that made several Coalition officers gasp in shock.
Human vessels were emerging from hidden facilities across multiple star systems, not just around Kepler.
442b. Entire fleets of ships with technology that made Coalition warships look like antiques. "How many ships do you have?" whispered Air Marshal Eastek. "Enough," Chen replied simply. "More than enough to ensure that the Coalition understands the new balance of power in this galaxy." The USCS Retribution achieved position directly above the Coalition fleet, its massive bulk casting shadows across their ships. At close range, Coalition sensors could analyze its construction in detail, revealing technology that shouldn't have been possible. "Sir," reported the engineering officer, "scans of the human vessel indicate they've achieved matter-energy conversion at the quantum level. Their entire ship appears to be constructed from programmable exotic matter. They've essentially built a vessel that can reconfigure itself into any required configuration. Meaning? Meaning, sir, that ship could transform into anything they need. A fortress, a manufacturing facility, a weapons platform that could sterilize star systems. The officer's voice carried undertones of professional awe. They've essentially created the ultimate military tool. A new transmission came from the human vessel, but this time it wasn't Governor Chen. The figure that appeared on the screen wore the uniform of a military organization that Coalition databases couldn't identify, with rank insignia suggesting authority that exceeded anything in their experience. Admiral Vexthanis, the new figure began. I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres, United Human Defense Command. I understand you're having some difficulty accepting your current situation. Admiral Torres appeared to be in his 60s, with the bearing of a professional soldier who had spent decades preparing for this exact moment. Behind him, Coalition officers could see glimpses of technology so advanced it appeared to be magic. Admiral Torres, Vexthanis replied, struggling to maintain diplomatic composure. I was not aware that humans possessed a unified military command. Oh, we've had unified command for quite some time, Admiral, along with unified purpose. You see, when we learned about the Coalition's expansion philosophy, we decided that humanity needed to be prepared for eventual contact with aggressive species. Torres gestured to displays behind him showing human military strength in detail. The numbers were staggering. Millions of ships, billions of soldiers, industrial capacity that could support warfare on a galactic scale. We've spent 8 decades building the most advanced military force in galactic history, Admiral. Not because we wanted to conquer anyone, but because we knew that eventually someone like you would come calling. The display showed human defensive installations throughout their space, not just around colonies, but around every star system, every planet, every important location. Humanity hadn't just built an army, they had fortified their entire civilization. Now, Admiral, let me explain what's going to happen. Your surviving forces will be allowed to return to Coalition space. You will deliver our message to your leadership. And you will make it very clear that any future aggression against human space will be met with overwhelming force. Torres leaned forward, his expression becoming deadly serious. Let me be absolutely clear about what overwhelming force means in this context. Humans have the capability to sterilize every Coalition homeworld simultaneously. We can shut down your faster-than-light communications, disable your industrial infrastructure, and reduce your entire civilization to radioactive debris before your leadership even realizes they're under attack. The tactical display showed the true scope of human military capability. Ships that could travel between star systems in minutes rather than weeks, weapons that could destroy planets from interstellar distances, manufacturing systems that could produce entire fleets faster than the Coalition could deploy them. We don't want to do that, Admiral. We prefer peaceful coexistence. But we want to make sure you understand that peace is a choice we're offering, not a weakness you can exploit. Admiral Vexthanis looked around his command center one final time, at the finest officers from 19 different species, all of whom had been comprehensively outmatched by a civilization they had underestimated. We accept your terms, he said quietly. Excellent, Torres replied. Your surviving vessels will be escorted to the edge of human space and provided with navigation data for your return journey. Any attempt to deploy sensors or weapons during transit will be considered an act of war. The transmission ended, leaving the Coalition fleet alone, with the knowledge that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy had just changed forever. As human escort vessels began taking position around the battered Coalition ships, Admiral Vexthanis realized that his species had just encountered something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization more advanced than their own that had no interest in conquest. It was, in many ways, more terrifying than any enemy they had ever faced. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler, 442b, as historians would later name it, the Coalition High Command convened the largest emergency session in their civilization's history. Representatives from 19 species gathered in the massive amphitheater on Tropmar Prime, their homeworld and seat of galactic government. The atmosphere was unlike anything in Coalition history. These were species that had conquered 17 star systems, dominated hundreds of worlds, and considered themselves the apex of galactic evolution. They had never known defeat, never experienced fear, never questioned their absolute superiority over all other forms of life. Now they sat in stunned silence as Admiral Vexthanis delivered his report about humanity. The human designation of primitive species was not merely incorrect, he began. his translator converting his clicking speech into the common tongue. It was catastrophically wrong. We did not encounter a species using stone tools and chemical explosives. We encountered the most advanced military civilization in recorded galactic history. The assembled representatives shifted uneasily. Supreme Chancellor Morthak of the Thurok Dominance raised one of his cybernetically enhanced arms. Admiral, surely you exaggerate. No species possesses technology superior to the Coalition. With respect, Chancellor, that assumption nearly resulted in the annihilation of our entire fleet. Vex Tharnas activated the holographic display system showing tactical recordings from the engagement. Computer display human weapons performance data. The amphitheater filled with images that defied belief. Coalition soldiers being eliminated by invisible enemies from impossible ranges. Advanced warships being destroyed by planetary defense systems that shouldn't exist. The massive human battleship that had demonstrated the ability to vaporize entire fleets with weapons that violated known physics. These recordings have been verified by our most advanced analysis systems, Vex Tharnas continued. Every piece of data has been confirmed by multiple independent sources. The humans possess technology that exceeds our capabilities by orders of magnitude. Intelligence Coordinator Thiska manipulated her tentacles nervously as she accessed her data systems. Chancellor, post-engagement analysis suggests that humans have been aware of our civilization for approximately 80 standard years. During that time, they conducted systematic intelligence gathering while concealing their own capabilities. Impossible, rumbled Defense Minister Krulthak. Our security protocols would have detected any espionage activities. Sir, Thiska replied, according to human sources, they captured one of our exploration vessels 8 decades ago. They studied our technology, learned our languages, and monitored our expansion activities. We had no knowledge of this because they returned the vessel and crew after comprehensive interrogation and memory modification. The implications sent a chill through the assembled representatives. The humans had been watching them, studying them, preparing for eventual contact while the Coalition had remained completely unaware of their existence. Computer, ordered Chancellor Morthak, display comparative analysis of Coalition versus human capabilities based on available data. The holographic display shifted to show a side-by-side comparison that made several representatives question their own senses. In every category, technology, industrial capacity, military strength, scientific advancement, humans exceeded Coalition capabilities by factors that suggested they were operating on entirely different principles of physics and engineering.
How is this possible? Demanded Science Minister Darvov.
Our technological development represents millions of years of advancement across 19 species. How could a single species achieve such capabilities? Admiral Vekthanis manipulated the display controls, showing intelligence gathered during their brief contact with human forces. According to human historical records, their species has a unique characteristic that distinguishes them from all other known life forms. They refer to it as exponential problem-solving under pressure. Meaning? Meaning that when faced with existential threats, humans do not simply adapt or evolve gradually. They undergo rapid technological and social transformation at rates that appear to violate natural law. When they learned about the Coalition's expansion philosophy, they underwent such transformation. The display showed human technological development over the past 80 years. The progression was so rapid it appeared to be artificially accelerated. Within decades, they had progressed from basic space travel to technology that made Coalition achievements look primitive. But surely, suggested Economic Coordinator Vextal, such rapid advancement would require resources beyond the capacity of any single species. Sir, Fisker replied, analysis suggests that humans achieved matter-energy conversion at the quantum level approximately 50 years ago. They essentially gained the ability to transform any element into any other element at will. Resource scarcity ceased to be a limiting factor for their development. The silence that followed was deafening. The Coalition's entire expansion philosophy was based on controlling resources and production capacity. If humans could create any resource from basic matter, they had achieved post-scarcity civilization decades ago. What are their territorial claims? Asked Chancellor Morthak. Extensive. Admiral Vixthanis replied grimly. Human space encompasses 47 star systems, each one fortified to a degree that exceeds our most defended positions. However, their territorial claims extend far beyond their current borders. How far? According to Fleet Admiral Torres, humans claim defensive authority over any species that requests their protection from Coalition expansion. They have established what they term protected status for civilizations that do not wish to join the Coalition. The implications hit the assembled representatives like a physical blow. The coalition's expansion had always depended on their ability to overwhelm individual species before they could organize effective resistance. If humans were offering protection to potential targets, expansion would become impossible. How many species have requested this protection? Inquired Defense Minister Krultak.
Thessica consulted her data systems, her bioluminescent patches flickering with distress. Sir, intelligence reports indicate that 43 species have formally requested human protection status in the past 6 months.
An additional 79 are currently in negotiation. 79? Chancellor Morthak's cybernetic enhancements sparked with feedback as he processed the implications. That represents virtually every unaligned species in our expansion zone. Yes, sir. It appears that news of human capabilities has spread throughout the galaxy much faster than we anticipated. Admiral Vex Tharnas activated a new display showing Coalition territorial holdings versus human-protected space. The map revealed a devastating truth. Coalition expansion had effectively ended. Human protection agreements created defensive zones that the Coalition could not penetrate without triggering a war they could not win. What are our options? Asked Chancellor Morthak, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Limited, Vex Tharnas replied. Option 1. Attempt to negotiate some form of coexistence with humans. Option 2. Withdraw to current territorial holdings and abandon expansion entirely. Option 3. Attempt to develop countermeasures to human technology. And Option 4. Pressed Defense Minister Krultak. There is no option 4, sir. Military action against humans would result in the complete annihilation of coalition civilization. Their technological superiority is absolute. The assembled representatives sat in stunned silence, contemplating the end of everything they had worked to achieve for centuries. The coalition had been built on the principle of inevitable expansion, the belief that their military superiority would eventually encompass the entire galaxy. Humans had shattered that certainty in a single afternoon. Sir, interrupted Communication Coordinator Eastel, receiving priority transmission from human space. Source identified as Fleet Admiral Torres. Put him through. The holographic display shifted to show the human military leader, his presence somehow dominating the massive amphitheater, despite being a simple transmission. Behind him, Coalition representatives could see glimpses of technology that made their most advanced systems look like primitive tools. Chancellor Morthak, Torres began. I understand you're conducting a review of recent events.
I thought this might be an appropriate time to discuss the future of coalition human relations.
Admiral Torres, the Chancellor replied, struggling to maintain diplomatic composure. What are humanity's intentions regarding the coalition? Simple.
We want you to stop conquering other species. We want you to respect the territorial integrity of civilizations that choose not to join your organization. And we want to establish communication protocols to prevent future misunderstandings. And if the coalition chooses not to accept these terms? Torres's expression remained pleasant, but something in his eyes suggested depths of capability that the coalition had only glimpsed. Chancellor, I hope you understand that those aren't terms. They're facts about how the galaxy works now. The coalition can choose to operate within the new reality, or it can choose to become a historical footnote. Are you threatening us, Admiral? I'm educating you, Chancellor. Let me show you something that might clarify your situation. The display behind Torres shifted to show a real-time view of coalition space from human observation platforms. The detail was staggering. Individual ships in orbit around coalition homeworlds, personnel movements on planetary surfaces, communication traffic between government facilities. This is live surveillance data from your capital system, Chancellor. We can see everything you do, monitor every communication, track every ship movement. You have no secrets from us, no hidden capabilities we haven't accounted for, no surprises we haven't prepared for. Defense Minister Krultak rumbled his outrage. Such surveillance is an act of war. No, Minister, it's an act of preparation. Let me explain what war would actually look like. Torres manipulated controls, and the display showed tactical projections that made coalition military planners question their own sanity. Human weapons platforms targeting every coalition military installation simultaneously. Faster-than-light missiles that could reach coalition homeworlds in minutes rather than weeks. Manufacturing systems that could produce invasion fleets faster than coalition forces could deploy defensive measures. Total duration of conflict, approximately 14 hours. Torres continued calmly. Coalition casualties, complete. Human casualties, 0. Collateral damage to neutral species, minimal. as our weapons are precise enough to target specific installations without affecting surrounding areas.
The projections were so overwhelming that several representatives required medical attention to process the psychological impact. However, Torres continued, we prefer cooperation to conquest.
Humans have no desire to rule other species. We simply want to ensure that aggressive expansion ends and that civilizations have the right to determine their own futures.
Chancellor Morthak studied the human admiral, recognizing something he had never encountered before: absolute power wielded with restraint. What exactly are you proposing? A new galactic order based on voluntary association rather than coercive expansion.
Species that wish to join the coalition may do so freely. Species that wish to remain independent may do so without fear of conquest. And species that request human protection will receive it. And the coalition's role in this new order? Whatever you choose it to be, Chancellor, you can continue to exist as a voluntary association of like-minded species. You can contribute to galactic development and scientific advancement. You can participate in peaceful trade and cultural exchange. Torres paused meaningfully. You simply cannot continue conquering other civilizations. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before Chancellor Morthak responded. The coalition will need time to consider your proposals. Of course. Take all the time you need. Just remember that while you're considering, we'll be watching. And protecting. And preparing.
Torres' smile was polite but implacable.
The galaxy has changed, Chancellor. The age of predation is over. The age of cooperation begins now. The transmission ended, leaving the Coalition High Command alone with the knowledge that their civilization had just encountered something unprecedented in galactic history, a species powerful enough to enforce peace. In the months that followed, the Coalition underwent the most significant restructuring in its history. Expansion ceased entirely. Military forces were redirected from conquest to defense. Diplomatic protocols were established to negotiate voluntary membership rather than demanding submission. The change was not easy. Many coalition species struggled to adapt to a reality where military might could not solve every problem, where other civilizations possessed the right to refuse their advances, where humans watched every move with technology that made resistance futile. But gradually, a new stability emerged. Species that had been conquered generations earlier began to experience freedoms they had forgotten existed. Trade relationships developed based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Scientific advancement accelerated as resources were diverted from military expansion to peaceful development. And throughout the galaxy, the story spread of humanity, the species that had appeared primitive while building the most advanced civilization in galactic history, the hunters who had turned the galaxy's apex predators into prey, the warriors who had ended war through overwhelming strength. The Coalition learned to speak softly, because humanity had shown them what a big stick really looked like. In the end, Admiral Vextanus reflected years later, humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won a war so completely that the enemy thanked them for it. The Mockery had indeed turned to terror, but the terror had become something even more powerful: respect. And in a galaxy where strength had always been the only law, humans had written a new code entirely. They had taught the universe that the strongest predator of all was one that chose not to hunt.